Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. And thank you for joining us today on this session for protecting your online identity and building cybersecurity awareness. Thank you, Vanessa and the Filipino School of New York and New Jersey for helping host this session. I think protecting your online identity and building cybersecurity awareness is on top of priorities of corporations, mega corporations, and everyone, people, are everyday people. I think what we've seen is that the cyber crimes have really been on the rise just because of the pandemic. Everyone's working from home, and I think the FBI had reported over the last year a 400% increase in reported cybercrime. So they've seen an increase of over 1 million reported complaints, between May 2020 and May 2021. Right, and as I was talking to Vanessa just earlier this month, in October 1st, we saw the potential first in the US medical malpractice lawsuit where allegedly a ransomware for a hospital in Alabama, a baby had died because their computer systems were seized by a ransomware attack. So unfortunately, these cyber crimes now are creeping into our day-to-day life. Okay, so let's move on here. So my name is Virginia Mayo. I am a distinguished engineer in IBM GTS and soon to be Kyndryl. And when people ask me what I do for a living, and especially when speaking with parents and family friends, the easiest way for me to share with them what I do for a living is I make sure that my customers don't end up in the front pages of the news. Right? I make sure that they have good enterprise systems hygiene. And I wanted to break out cybersecurity in two aspects. So cybersecurity has evolved from preventative, right? Preventing ransomware attacks, scanning for intrusion points. But because of how things has evolved over the last 5 years, it's really it's become the principle has been not if you will get attacked, it's when, right? So right here is the divide. It's like day zero is when you get attacked, and so now the focus has been tuned towards building secure infrastructure by design, building resilient infrastructure by design, so that you could continuously deliver despite any disasters. It doesn't have to be pandemic. It could be a typhoon. Being able to restore the business back to business, or a hospital or a local government back to where it was before the adverse events. So I'm going to start off with this video.
Is that really no volume, no sound?
Oh, there's no audio?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't hear it.
Okay. I thought it was just part of it that we're just gonna observe.
Oh, I don't see.
Yeah, it's the audio.
You know what I will do is I'm gonna share the audio. Sorry, I'm gonna share the presentation too. This is really funny kind of take on how we engage with each other socially. So the premise of it is this fella following somebody and like straight up following them in person, and how what we do online when we like a post or we say we're in a relationship. If you were to do that in real life, it's odd, right? There's, I forget what app it was when you can poke someone. It's like, if you poke someone in real life, it's like, I don't even know you, or you like my pictures, or I want to be your friend. So this guy's following, asking random people on the street, can you be my friend? Can you be my friend? So that's the premise of this video. And the point is just when you think about what we do online and how, sometimes people are very courageous or too courageous, it's, when you translate that into what we would do actually in person, it's rarely the same. So, but I'll share this video. I think it's a funny interpretation of how kind of strange this social media is and how we engage with each other. So, okay, so protecting our online identity and our data and digital reputation. So again, it's just the video was a warm up to how the internet can really be quite different from our behavior in person. It's commonly acceptable to follow people on social media and Twitter, but if you were to follow around in the street, it would be considered weird, right? And you wouldn't poke someone or write on their wall. It has a completely different meaning when you're doing it in Facebook or if you're doing it in real life. So today, really, we will focus on talking about the data that you're generating from using our cell phones and all our devices and social media, and how that builds your digital reputation, and how we are the first lines of defense in cyber crimes by knowing what data we are sharing out into the cyber universe. Okay, so, it's not a big group, but show of hands, how many of us have shared trivial information on the internet, right? Who has social media accounts? I do. I think the key is the familiarity with the privacy settings in these media accounts, right? Do you think that your passwords are strong enough to withstand hacking, right? Who thinks that they are safe? I mean, especially through the pandemic, a lot of us were bored, and something that seemed like a simple game like this, right? You would think that it's just, I'm just sharing where I grow up, but in fact, you may be sharing your security questions, right? And a lot of the platforms we use in banks. So, right. Has anyone here been hacked or been made aware that their data has been compromised by these banks? I mean, these were very public events, right? I think it started to the Target breach, where the credit cards, a lot of us were, we received letters saying potentially your data could have potentially been part of this breach. We're going to offer you 6 months of private monitoring, things like that. I can't even count how many times I received something like that from any of these, these stores that we frequent. So when you think about hackers, the general perception is they are loners, techno geeks who live in their parents' basements, with gadgets and junk food. Today's hackers are your professionals, right? We work in corporations and buildings like these. So really, I think the primary motivation for these cyber crimes is, right, money, right? So this is a data that I've been, a study that I've been, following for over 5 years now. This started about 5 years ago. The Ponemon Institute partners with IBM Security to put up this study for the cost of a data breach. And again, we're talking about mega companies here. Think about your Fortune 10 at 50, Fortune 100 companies, versus a lot of the cyber crimes now are also targeting the small to mid-sized businesses, right? As I was talking about earlier with Vanessa, if you wanted to really take advantage of people, you're not going to go after the Fortune 10 company and ask them for 10 million bucks. I'm going to go after the hospitals and the small local governments out in Iowa that are not known for their airtight security infrastructure, right? If I could get $10,000 for every ransomware, and I get 100 of these smaller businesses and hospitals, then that's low-hanging fruit for your for your cyber criminals. So there's many different methods that hackers use to get information, and the most common one, we're going to talk about the most common ways for hackers to trace your digital life. I think we're all very familiar with phishing, right? Email phishing is a the most common way that your information, someone that is masquerading as someone trustworthy, will try to get your information. It is the most common attempt to acquire your sensitive information, like your username, passwords, and credit card details, and sometimes indirectly your money, right? So be wary for where, it used to be that it's so much easier to spot phishing examples if you were to hover over a link. Usually these emails look legitimate. I think by a show of hands, have you ever received an email that looks legitimate like this, right? It looks legit. You have an Apple ID. The email looks convincing. So what do? You click on the link at the body of the email, right? It used to, again, it was easy to spot these phishing emails, but because the English was maybe poor, and you can just hover and you can see the link was not good. But now, again, cyber criminals have evolved their game. They've upgraded the game. And I think this is something I was just talking to my parents the other day. Phone phishing has been very prevalent too, especially through this pandemic. When you get a phone call, I think there's a very well-known one where, because of all the stimulus money coming in, right? You're getting all these calls asking you for Social Security. In fact, my dad was saying, "Hey, they called for this bank, and this is my dad," right? And I was like, "Dad, I'm a security professional. You're not supposed to do that, or you're not supposed to share any of your information. They should really be writing you a letter, things like that." So, all right, and I think the purpose of today's this session is really it's not just us, right? I think it's also providing that awareness to our children, and the elder community are the biggest targets of these phone phishing, right? How many stories have we heard of, grandmothers thinking their grandkids need money and would send money? I mean, it's just been so prevalent. So it's very important that we as a community have these conversations with our titos and titas and our lolos and lolas, making sure that we are all aware of how to protect our online identities. So, all right, just taking some notes. Okay, social engineering. This is another. Have anyone heard of this term, social engineering, in a context of cybersecurity? So it's a deception used to manipulate individuals into divulging their confidential or personal information. This next video, I hope, let's try again if it'll play, but it's so interesting. And if you all have seen this, this is a Jimmy Kimmel when they go on the street. Let's see if it'll play. If you can hear the audio. Can you hear that?
No.
Oh, you still can't? Oh, I thought the video, I can hear it. But so he goes into the Sony hack and how, the information was breached, right? Data was breached. Then they go on Hollywood Avenue and just asking random people, saying, "Oh, hey, do you think you have a good password?" It's like, "Oh yeah, I think I have a good password." It's like, "What's your password?" It's like, "I'm not gonna tell you my password," would be like the initial reaction. The next thing, you're like, "Okay, so you have a good password. What is it? Can you tell me a little bit about it?" It's like, "Oh, it's where I went to school and the year I graduated." Okay. It's like, oh, so where did you grow up? Yeah, I grew up in San Diego. What high school did you go to? Oh, I went to San Diego High School. It's like, oh, okay, I know someone that went there too. It's like, what year did you, what year were you when when you attended, San Diego High School? It's like 1990. It's like, oh, okay, so you graduated 1994. Yes. So social engineering is just a way to talk to people to be, for them to, next thing you know, you're telling them your security questions, your passwords, things like that, which has been so common. So not just, not just in just talking to someone, but playing a lot of these games that we would see in social media. So again, these are really short videos, no longer than 2-3 minutes. I'll share them with Vanessa because they're really interesting. You think about our behavior and how one could easily lure us into divulging personal information like that. So okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about your personal data and what makes your digital footprint. All right, so your personal data really is anything that could be mapped to you as a person. Things like your name, your address, your phone number, and your email, including the schools or where we work, right? Awards or your schedule, the times that we work, who your friends are, and what your hobbies and interests are. So each of these make up part of your online identity. And social media is an area for concerns, right? Because attackers are using social networks like Facebook and Instagram, WhatsApp as delivery vehicles for malware and information gathering. How many times, even in Facebook, has someone friended you and they pretended to be like your aunt, right? I have my aunt saying, don't accept friend requests from so-and-so, that's not me. And then they're contacting them on Messenger asking for money. It's like, so, and even within just my vernacular, it's like my sphere, I hear it often, right? We hear it often. So the cyber criminals are really targeting. It's been easier to target a lot of people because of these social networks, right? And these I personally feel like that these platforms are not doing enough to be able to stop these types of crimes. So I think there's also a lot of embarrassment that people don't report it if they become targets of these where someone, if you gave $20 here or $50 here, you'd be embarrassed that you fell victim to that deception, so you won't even report it. So how many incidents have taken place like that that's not even getting reported to the police? The key thing is really reviewing your privacy settings in this social media accounts, including who you are friends with, right? Do you know every single one in your friends list? So this is one of the key things that I also tell my children is that before you post, really think about, is it true? Is it hurtful? Is it illegal? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Because as I know, I don't know if everyone knows, is that stuff on the internet, it never goes away, right? I mean, who has a photo, that photo, I mean, if it goes viral, could you live with that? Things like that. So I have to tell my kids and, parents, aunts and uncles. So the secret life of our data and our digital footprint. So devices are the key, right? When you use your phone or you browse on your desktop, we leave bits and pieces of information without even thinking about it. Every time you go on a website, who recalls accepting the cookies, right? Before you even read anything. So each of these little interactions are, things that we are telling the world, right? These are public pieces of personal data, and they're able to be accessed by people who can use them to pretend them to be you, right? So even some of the data you aren't aware of, like your Google searches, things that you've liked or things that you've pinned, these are being gathered and often used for other purposes. A lot of the photos we post have GPS coordinates, right? It tells us where we are at that point in time. We are tracked by the IP addresses through our internet service providers, so that they know that I am the one posting this in these sites. So a lot of these things we don't think about when we post, but all of these is getting collected. One of the more powerful phrases I heard about data gathering, right? And you think like, why is that such a big deal that, people are gathering my data? But it's used to tune a lot of things, to be able to understand, for instance, who gets a mortgage and loan, right? All of this is data mining, data science. Who gets into the school that they want to, who gets preference when they would go to a hospital, things like that. You don't think about that, but it is what is happening. The elections and all the fake news, right? That's being able to tune data to tell a different story that may be different from reality, right? So that's also something that's emerging, is that a lot of these data could be tuned to use, to deliver a different outcome, right? Okay. So what happens to the data? Again, every time you surf the internet, we leave behind traces of yourself without even thinking about it. Some of them are published voluntarily on social media. I admit I do this often, right? It's a way for me to communicate to my family in the Philippines so that they see the kids as they grow up. But, some things I think we could avoid, sharing age, your location, things like that, or maybe perhaps publishing them later, right? You don't want to broadcast to the world that you're on vacation. Maybe publishing it a week later would be better, right? So I explained it's literally called cookies. What you leave in the websites, and it tells you, do you accept the cookies, right? So, internet ISPs, internet service providers, collect your name, your addresses, your password, your payment information, your preferences, so that they know when you go back, you'll have a better experience because they would know you already, right? So I'm sure this happens to me every single day. So think of when you go to, Target, at target.com, and the next thing you know, you go on Facebook, you see Target ads there, right? Or the other day, I was looking at a Kalahari resorts and, the Poconos, the resorts in the Poconos. I go to social media, I'm seeing Kalahari, I'm seeing Aquatopia, right? That's because of these cookies that we are, essentially like breadcrumbs we're leaving, so that you go back to the social medias and then bam, you're, inundated by ads for that, whatever you were browsing. One of the more powerful philosophies I had heard about social media and these platforms is that if you didn't buy the product, you are the product, right? If you didn't buy the product, you are the product. So our behaviors, what we are doing, what we are looking at, it drives them to, to show you the targets or these resorts that maybe you were looking into, right? That was a very powerful thing to understand. And the other thing too, with kind of capturing your preferences and behaviors online, what's interesting is that I just saw this about Facebook, for instance. They the analytics, I think this was just recent. She spoke to the Capitol, right? She was a previous Facebook employee, where, when you're looking at like hate, something hateful, people tend to stay on that content longer than if they were to see something positive. Can you imagine that, right? That you've got this data scientist that perhaps curating bad and hurtful content because people seems to have an appetite for that even more. So that's very frightful, right? That there are teams and organizations, that would take that data and because that data is powerful, right? So one of the ways to combat, so the first one is phishing, right? Very common, but one of the ways to combat cyber crimes is really having strong passwords and securing our devices. So I think this is towards the end of the presentation. So again, mobile devices are easily lost or stolen. I've lost a couple in my life. Think about the sorts of data that are stored in the devices. Do you have personal data there? Of course we do, right? We have our bank information, credit card information in our smartphones these days. So if your device was lost or stolen, would it be easy to hack, right? So is there anyone here whose phone is not password protected or print protected? Please, if not, do that, right? Many of our devices now have the fingerprint, the biometric passwords, including like a digital password. Things like multi-factor authentication, having not just like the digit password, but also your biometric, right? Okay. Having good password hygiene. I'm gonna start from the bottom up. Best practices to use a password manager. This is like a religion for me. If anyone, there's a lot of really good free programs for a password manager. You just have to remember your primary password to that password vault, right? It's called password managers or a password vault, where you would list out all of the different accounts that you have, bank accounts, and a lot of them would generate for you really a very strong passwords, like nothing like password 123 or 123 password, nothing like that. It will mix it up for you, random combination of letters, symbols, and capital letters, small letters. So, and where possible, use two-step verification, right? Two-step verification. What is that? It's like you have a password and maybe you have a passphrase or like a picture, right? That means, even if your password gets compromised and then they can't go beyond because they don't know the pass key, or like this picture that you're showing me, I don't know what that means, right? So a lot of, I think, banks and a lot of the banks and shopping platforms have implemented these types of two-factor authentication. A lot of it is driven by the government, pushing them to employ more sophisticated password access system. So, okay, and protecting your devices. A lot of devices come built in with virus protection. Keep that up to date. Where possible, turn on firewalls within your homes. Protect your Wi-Fi with a password. Keeping your systems up to date. They seem annoying, those updates that say, I want to install this overnight, but what that does is it hardens your operating system, the apps that you're using in your devices. Think of every technology we consume as built and developed by humans. By the nature of that, they have flaws. So these updates are the ones where, they're all apps, softwares we use, they always are scanned by whoever provided it, the vendor, and looking for vulnerabilities, which are the entry points for someone to hack you, right? This is for both, us as individuals or the enterprise, where when they see failures or flaws in the code, they publish the updates to remediate them. So every time you see, the nag to upgrade your browser, the nag to update your app because you're using like a down level version, update it, right? These vendors are constantly evolving the software and they are remediating these flaws. Some of them could be something as small as, okay, they're introducing a new feature, but quite often they introduce a new feature, they found a flaw in the software and they want to fix that for you, right? using touch IDs, we talked about using biometric where possible. I mean, corporations are increasingly implementing a lot of these two-factor authentication where when you log in, it will send you a text on your mobile phone, and you have to put in the number, that things like that. So again, really making it hard for someone to pretend that they are you, right? Using private networks whenever possible. This is more for the enterprise. And then finally, backing up your data. This is an area where I'm digging into lately. So again, going to that principle of, it's not a matter of if you will get attacked, it's when. Make sure you have good data backup of everything that you have in your phone and your computer devices, right? Things like, I can't see it here, but I've got like a 10 terabyte external drive where I back up pictures, right? Pictures of that's in my phone, my important files, documentations, right? Make sure you have a backup of that and have redundancy, right? What's redundancy? So besides having it in the an external drive, I even, a lot of these services like Google or Amazon, if you have an Amazon account, you can automatically back up your photos into the cloud, right? Into the Amazon cloud. So I think I have three. I have I have two. I have a Google account. I have an Amazon account where my data gets backed up. Just in case something happens, I lose my phone, I know that it still exists. I think one of the most devastating time for me was, and it was an honest mistake, was I had lent my phone to my daughter. This was when she didn't have a phone yet. And she, because she was in music school and I left her there, and she could not type my password properly. So because I was using my cell phone also for work, it self-destructs. So when she couldn't put the password 20 times, it deleted everything from that phone. So I think it was like 3 months worth of pictures in there that was not backed up. So after that, I was like, oh my God, like, really, come on. So it's not just the cyber crime, it's just, life. So, all right, so to try to wrap this up, the key point that, I really want you all to take away from here is that your personal data is very precious. You always hear about, your data getting sold, right? But it's a way to tune outcomes. That's really the reason why data is so powerful. I've been referring to data as the new oil lately, because it's a way for corporations to, get, get followers or get people to support them. So, all right, very few simple rules to protect your data is, again, keep personal data to yourself. Anything that could be mapped to you as a person, your name, your social security number, your biometric records, your cell phones, keep it to yourself, right? Because when you combine that with other information, those could be used for identity theft. When you are surfing the internet, very common practice to look at the URL that has an S at the end, so that it securely transmits your data in the internet. As you leave cookies, it's making sure that it's securely moving your data across the website you are browsing. Okay, finally, there are ways to make the internet work for you, and only if only positive things about you can be found on internet for years, right? The internet, I've seen, has been a very powerful way to where companies are using it when they're hiring. When they're hiring people, they look at what data is out there. In fact, that's one of the first things they do now is they'll Google you, what comes up, right? I've even read where colleges, there are companies that have data for children since they were born, right? If clearly we all go to hospitals, and do we know what the hospital is doing with that data of us, right? All those consents that we said, all right, release these here, is that data protected is that getting sold to colleges, right? And again, it never goes away. So think of an internet as an opportunity to reflect one positively. So taking control of your digital reputation, again, you really know all your friends, right? What can they see? And what do people who are not your friends see, right? There's a setting in Facebook where you can see like, all right, well, this is Virginia Mayo Policarpio, but they only see like, this is me. They're not seeing my posts, right? What does your digital presence say about you? And do the photos reflect you positively? So again, just a basic review of your privacy settings could be powerful for protecting your online identity. All right, well, that's all I have to share with all of you today. I think we made good on some times, and if you have any questions to ask, let me know.
I have a question to ask, Virginia.
Yeah.
So, so I look up. I use LinkedIn to read. I follow a few people and read some of the things that they write about. And what are your thoughts on some people writing some stories about how they were inspired? It is a very positive article.
Mm-hmm.
But like they're what they go through, like sometimes they are inspired by what their children go through.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in Lincoln, it's something that they talk about: perseverance, patience, the values. But do you think that is like similar to what you were talking about and sharing a bit of information?
Oversharing in
Yeah.
LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is just traditionally just professional connecting, right? So I have my own point of view about LinkedIn, and that's a very good question for this. I feel like it's part of the culture transformation that a lot of companies and people are bringing to their work. I feel like part of that is just this movement of being our own selves in our company. And probably, when I started my career about 20 years ago, you'd never hear like my CEO never had town halls, right? Now he does like an open mic every month just to be relatable. I think that it's a balance that we have to strike, that, I'm not a machine. I work here, I'm very professional and I deliver my work, but I'm also a mother. So, I think it depends on how much one is willing to share. And I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm going to find you in LinkedIn, but I know exactly what you're talking about, where the lines is getting blurred. I
Yeah.
think overall it's good, but again, it depends on what you're willing to share. In fact, I have a story, and I had to think about, because I posted it in LinkedIn. I said, should I post this? Because I'm posting pictures of my sons, right? My
Oh,
sons are playing football. But at the same time, I realized the power of sharing, that I'm a mother, I'm an engineer, this is my life outside of work. And, for someone that was starting out, they might see, oh, well, I could be like that. I could be, I could be a, internet security, professional, and have children too, and raise, kids. So it's one of those things I had to think about, is this the persona I want to portray? So I looked more on the positive side of it and said, well, if this was, seen by someone who thought they couldn't have a career like this, then that would be a powerful story. So it depends, I think, on the individual, right? So
mhm.
that's a very good observation, because I see that too, and sometimes you're like, oh,
Yeah,
cringe.
it's like when because when I had my LinkedIn, it was what, 2006. At that time, LinkedIn was by invitation. You know, it's
Mm,
you have to be invited by somebody or something like somebody had to invite me in because somebody had shared with me what that organization, what that platform was at the time. There was no Facebook yet at the time, or I think it was just starting.
yeah.
So this social media is just starting at that time. And I just noticed some changes with the way or with what the content are being posted.
Uh-huh.
And like I said, they are very positive and they are in an inspiring um, tone and content. It's just that my observation is
Yeah, no, you're spot
it
on.
has evolved, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that's spot on because I've even seen, I think, where people would say, hey, this is LinkedIn, stop posting that. And people start fighting on the comments in LinkedIn. I said, whoa, this is LinkedIn. You know, you don't want personally, I wouldn't want my boss to see me having a
Yeah.
fight with someone because I'm saying, hey, I don't want to see this content here. So anyway, it's interesting, right? I guess there's
Yeah.
trolls everywhere, right? Trolls
Mhm.
are everywhere. So
Yeah, and I have another question, but I don't want to monopolize in case John and Vanessa has some questions. Okay, all right. So I think the other question that I have is, I'm sorry, I'm almost close to the baby boomer age, but that's why I guess. But I've just been so blessed with getting into technology because that was the time. so, so these cookies, I see this all the time, and you talked about earlier that when you accept it, you're gonna leave some crumbs to it.
yeah.
So what do you suggest? Do I decline?
No, you know what I do? If I can deal with not accepting it, I
Mm-hmm.
ignore it.
Or just do X, you know, like sometimes you just do an X, there is an X button that you can click out.
You can just close it, you
Okay.
know. And at the end of the day, it's, you know, we trust, right? We trust that they do the right thing and that they
Yeah.
don't collect our data. So
Mhm. Okay. All right. Okay. So that's all I have.
okay. And I hope it's not too heavy on a Saturday morning. So come on.
Oh, no, no, no. I think I've seen, I, I've seen a couple of iterations of these presentations, and thank you, Virginia. You've put it in such a terminology that is easily understandable and digestible, and whoever would be listening to this would really come out with something. So that is really very important. So thank you, thank you.
And it was very straightforward.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. In fact, I do this same lecture in schools because it's just digestible, like you all say. We need to really take this kinds of, you know, lectures and go on a roadshow and make it into kind of consumable information for everyone, right? Because I feel like it's a joint responsibility for us to talk to our kids about it, talk to our parents and aunts and uncles about it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, Virginia. So on behalf of the school, I wanted to thank you once again for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us. And I'm glad Fides and John and also myself were here to actually listen in on this. So hopefully the recording, which we'll share shortly, will be helpful to many others as well.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too. Stay safe.
You too.
Stay well.